Welcome to Dreamtale Sleep Stories. Tonight's reading is Snow White. Settle into your bed or sofa and let your shoulders, jaw, and eyelids grow heavy. Inhale slowly, 1, 2, 3, and sigh the air away, allowing the day to fade into quiet dark. With every soft inhale, you invite fresh English phrases. With every gentle exhale, stray thoughts drift farther off. Behind my voice flows a gentle 528 Hz melody, renowned for guiding the mind toward deep relaxation. Keep your eyes closed or follow the captions, whichever feels right. Simply receive the rhythm and resonance of the language. Deep in rest, tonight's phrases will take root like seeds, ready to bloom into stronger English skills with the morning light. When you feel settled, hold that unhurried breath and allow yourself to drift into the tale. Snow White begins now. And when the story's final line has faded, the music will linger a little longer, carrying you gently deeper into sleep. Snow White. Once upon a time, in a kingdom far away, there lived a beautiful queen who had long wished for a child. One winter day, as she sat sewing by her window, she pricked her finger with her needle. 3 drops of blood fell onto the white snow outside, and she made a wish. I wish for a daughter with skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as night, she said softly. Her wish came true, and soon she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl whom they named Snow White. Sadly, the queen died shortly after the birth, leaving the king heartbroken. After a year of mourning, the king married again. His new wife was very beautiful, but she was also proud and jealous. She owned a magic mirror that could answer any question truthfully. Every morning, the new queen would stand before her mirror and ask, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And the mirror would always reply, "You are the fairest of them all, my queen." This answer made the queen very happy, for she believed that beauty was the most important thing in the world. Years passed. Snow White grew into a lovely young woman. She was kind to everyone she met and helped the servants with their daily tasks. The people of the kingdom loved her gentle nature and sweet smile. On Snow White's 16th birthday, the queen went to her mirror, as usual, and asked her daily question. But this time, the mirror gave a different answer. "You are beautiful, my queen, it is true. But Snow White is now more beautiful than you." The queen's face turned red with anger. How could this be possible? She had always been the most beautiful woman in the kingdom. From that day forward, the queen's heart filled with jealousy and hatred towards Snow White. She could not bear the thought that someone else might be more beautiful than her. The queen called for her most trusted huntsman and gave him a terrible order. "Take Snow White deep into the forest and kill her," she commanded. "Bring me back her heart as proof that the deed is done." The huntsman was shocked by this cruel request, but he dared not disobey the queen. He led Snow White into the dark forest, telling her they were going to pick flowers for the castle. As they walked deeper into the woods, the huntsman's conscience began to trouble him. Snow White was so innocent and kind. How could he harm such a pure soul? When they reached the deepest part of the forest, the huntsman drew his knife. But as he looked at Snow White's trusting face, he could not bring himself to hurt her. "Princess," he said urgently, "you must run away from here immediately. The queen wants to harm you because she is jealous of your beauty. Go deep into the forest and never return to the castle." Snow White was frightened and confused, but she trusted the huntsman. She ran as fast as she could through the thick trees, branches catching at her dress and thorns scratching her hands. The huntsman killed a wild boar and took its heart back to the queen, telling her that his mission was complete. The evil queen was satisfied and believed that Snow White was dead. Meanwhile, Snow White ran through the forest until she could run no more. As night began to fall, she saw a small light shining through the trees. Following the light, she discovered a tiny cottage with a thatched roof and small windows. The cottage was perfectly clean and tidy. Everything inside was miniature-sized, as if it belonged to children. There were 7 small beds in a row, each with white sheets and colorful quilts. 7 small plates sat on a wooden table, along with 7 cups, 7 forks, and 7 spoons. Snow White was very hungry and thirsty after her long journey. She took a small bite from each plate and a tiny sip from each cup, being careful not to take too much from any one place. Feeling exhausted, she lay down across several of the small beds and fell into a deep sleep. When the cottage owners returned home that evening, they were surprised to find someone in their house. The 7 men were not ordinary people. They were dwarfs who worked in the diamond mines deep in the mountains. "Someone has been eating our food," said the first dwarf. "And someone has been drinking from our cups," said the second. "Look, someone is sleeping in our beds," exclaimed the third. The dwarfs gathered around Snow White, amazed by her beauty. They spoke in whispers so as not to wake her. When morning came, Snow White opened her eyes and was startled to see 7 small men looking at her with kind faces. "Please don't be afraid," said the eldest dwarf, whose name was Doc. "We won't hurt you, but tell us, how did you come to be in our cottage?" Snow White told them her sad story about the jealous queen and the huntsman's warning. The dwarfs listened with sympathy and anger at the queen's cruelty. "You may stay with us if you wish," offered Doc. "We leave early each morning to work in the mines and return in the evening. If you could keep our cottage clean and cook our meals, we would be happy to share our home with you." Snow White gratefully accepted their kind offer. She had nowhere else to go, and these 7 men seemed good and honest. The other dwarfs introduced themselves. Happy, who was always smiling. Grumpy, who complained about everything but had a good heart. Sleepy, who was always tired from working hard. Sneezy, who had terrible allergies. Bashful, who was very shy. And Dopey, who never spoke but was the most helpful of all. Snow White settled into a peaceful routine with the 7 dwarfs. Each morning, she would wake early to prepare their breakfast and pack their lunch pails. After they left for work, she would clean the cottage, tend the small garden, and prepare dinner. The dwarfs always returned home, happy to see Snow White. They would share stories about their day in the mines, and Snow White would tell them tales she remembered from her childhood in the castle. For many months, Snow White lived happily with the dwarfs. She felt safe and loved in their small cottage, far from the jealous queen. But one day, the queen went to her magic mirror and asked their usual question. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror replied, "You are beautiful, my queen, it is true. But Snow White, who lives with the 7 dwarfs beyond the hills, is still more beautiful than you." The queen realized that the huntsman had deceived her. Snow White was still alive. Her jealousy burned even stronger than before. The evil queen decided to take matters into her own hands. She disguised herself as an old peddler woman and traveled to the cottage in the forest. When Snow White saw the old woman approaching, she remembered the dwarf's warning never to let strangers into the cottage. But the woman seemed harmless, and Snow White felt sorry for her. "I have beautiful laces and ribbons to sell," called the disguised queen. "Surely a young lady like you would enjoy something pretty." Snow White admired the colorful laces through the window. The queen offered to help lace up Snow White's dress with a particularly beautiful blue ribbon. But the evil queen pulled the laces so tightly that Snow White could not breathe. She fell to the floor, gasping for air. When the dwarfs returned that evening, they found Snow White lying unconscious on the floor. Quickly, they cut the tight laces and helped her breathe again. "You must never let anyone into the cottage when we are away," Doc warned seriously. "The queen will try again to harm you." Snow White promised to be more careful, but the queen was already planning her next attempt. The next week, the disguised queen returned, this time selling beautiful combs and hair ornaments. Snow White remembered the dwarf's warning and refused to open the door. "I don't need to come inside," said the queen sweetly. "Just let me put this lovely comb in your hair through the window." The comb looked so beautiful that Snow White agreed. But as soon as the queen placed it in her hair, Snow White felt dizzy and collapsed. The comb was poisoned. Again, the dwarfs returned to find Snow White unconscious. They quickly removed the poisoned comb and revived her. "This is the queen's work," said Grumpy angrily. "She will not stop until she believes Snow White is dead." The dwarfs decided that one of them would stay home each day to protect Snow White. But the queen was more cunning than they realized. She consulted her magic mirror to learn the most powerful way to harm Snow White. The mirror told her about a special poison that could only be broken by love's first kiss. The queen spent days creating a perfect apple that was red on one side and green on the other. She poisoned only the red side, leaving the green side safe to eat. Disguising herself as a different old woman, the queen returned to the cottage when all the dwarfs were at work. This time, She appeared to be a simple farmer's wife, selling fresh apples. "I don't need anything," Snow White called through the closed door. "These are the finest apples in the kingdom," replied the queen. "I'll give you one for free. Look how beautiful it is." She held up the apple so Snow White could see it through the window. The red side gleamed like a jewel in the sunlight. "I cannot accept gifts from strangers," Snow White said, remembering her promise to the dwarfs. "If you're worried about the apple, watch me eat from it first," said the crafty queen. She took a large bite from the green side of the apple and chewed it happily. "See? It's perfectly safe and delicious." Snow White's mouth watered as she watched. The apple looked so fresh and sweet. Surely it would be safe if the old woman had eaten from it first. Against her better judgment, Snow White opened the window and accepted the apple. The moment she bit into the red side, the powerful poison entered her body. She fell to the floor as if dead, the apple still in her hand. The evil queen laughed with satisfaction. "Now I am the fairest of them all," she cried, and hurried back to her castle. When the dwarfs returned home, they found Snow White lying motionless on the floor. They tried everything they could think of to revive her, but nothing worked. She appeared to be dead, yet her skin remained as white as snow, her lips as red as blood. "She is so beautiful," whispered Bashful. "Even in death, she looks as if she is only sleeping." The dwarfs could not bear to bury someone so lovely in the dark ground. Instead, they made a coffin of glass and gold and placed it in a peaceful clearing surrounded by flowers. They took turns watching over her, and all the woodland animals came to pay their respects. Days turned to weeks, and weeks turned to months. But Snow White's beauty never faded. One day, a young prince was riding through the forest when he came upon the glass coffin. He was amazed by Snow White's beauty and asked the dwarfs to tell him her story. She was the kindest and most beautiful princess in the land, Doc explained sadly. An evil queen poisoned her because of jealousy. The prince was deeply moved by the story and by Snow White's peaceful face. Without thinking, he knelt beside the coffin and gently kissed her forehead. The moment his lips touched hers, the poison spell was broken. Snow White's eyes fluttered open, and she sat up with a gasp. "Where am I?" she asked, looking around in confusion. The dwarfs cheered with joy, and the prince helped her out of the coffin. Snow White was amazed to learn how long she had been under the poison spell. "Will you marry me?" asked the prince. "I have loved you since the moment I saw you." Snow White looked into his kind eyes and felt her heart fill with love. "Yes," she answered happily. The 7 dwarfs were invited to the royal wedding, where they were honored as heroes for protecting Snow White. They remained her dear friends for the rest of their lives. As for the evil queen, when she asked her mirror who was the fairest of them all, it replied, "Snow White, the new princess, is the fairest of them all." In her rage, the queen's heart finally burst, and she fell dead. The magic mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces, and her evil spells were broken forever. Snow White and the prince ruled the kingdom with kindness and wisdom. They lived happily ever after, and Snow White never forgot the 7 dwarfs who had saved her life with their friendship and love. And so the story ends, teaching us that true beauty comes from having a kind heart, and that love and friendship can overcome even the darkest evil.
you